Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Matthew Schreiner podcast. And in this episode, I want to sort of restate something I heard in a homily this weekend. So, over the weekend, we had a mass with the bishop for our diocese anniversary, and I was there at the mass. And so the mass was basically the Sunday mass. It had the Sunday readings and all that. And so with the homily, he was talking about the readings this week. But the thing he started off with was talking, and he said, "Your children might not listen to you, but they see and hear you." And his whole point was, we, especially the children, will learn from example. We'll learn from what you do and what you say and how you say and all that. They learn from you, regardless of if they listen to what you might say. And so he started off with a story from the archdiocese near us, and talking about how there was a priest who was running late. He goes, there's traffic, he's running late. He gets to mass, and there's no parking out in front of the church. And this is a school mass, by the way. And so he finds somewhere to park, and it's the reserved parking. What would you call it? It's not reserved parking. It's the parking right in front of a fire hydrant. So it's got the red lines that say, "Don't park here." So he parks there, and he says mass, and he comes back after mass. And the principal, or after mass, after he said goodbye to all the students and all that, the principal comes up and says, great mass probably, and says, "But in the future, don't park in the fire hydrant spot, because these children see that. They were talking about it and all that." So he says, "Well, do as I say, not as I do." But the point of that is that children will learn from your example. They'll learn and see from what you do, how you act, your mannerisms, all that. They will learn from you. And for that fact, the example and precedence that we set matters. It matters a whole lot. And it might not seem to matter. So with this, I think I can relate this to where we are right now. And so in this podcast, and talk about how it matters on how not only what we say, because obviously what we say, what we write, obviously what we say and what we do, it matters. What we say and what we write matters, pardon me. But it's also what we do that matters. And what we do matters in two ways. Number one, what is the precedence and example it sets? And number two, how does that affect, our own reputation and all that? And so, one thing with reputation is, of course, how do people see us? Our reputation is of who we are and what we do. And those things should be consistent. If they are not consistent, then that's not good. Obviously, there is a danger to consistency. Trent Horn talked about this, and he did a video about this, talking about some YouTuber, probably atheistic or at least not Catholic, who had these ideas, and he is sort of forced to almost have a dangerous consistency. If you want to see that video, you can check it out for yourself. I'm not going to, I can't remember who it was or whatever, but I know it's a Trent Horn video. The point is that we must be consistent, but consistency also means having, there's a dangerous consistency where we have one bad view that leads us to take many different bad views, or views that might not be beneficial because of another view we have. So consistency is key. Consistency above all in everything. Consistency is, again, what I'd say is our reputation is a part of two things: who we are, who our identity is, and what we do, how we act, our mannerisms, which involves how we look, what we say, what we do, what we read, regardless, you understand that. And who we are. If I am a Catholic, what does that mean? What does that mean I do, and what does it mean that my identity looks like? Identity is something I am looking at currently for talking about in a document. There's a quote from Blessed Carlos Acutis, soon to be Saint Carlos Acutis, that says, most people are born original, but they end up dying copies, end up dying photocopies. Whatever his exact wording is, I can't remember. But I've thought about that, and I've thought about this in context of certain various things. And so that's something I'm looking at right now with some other topics that will be discussed in an article I am doing for my publications that I do. But regardless of that, my point with that is our example. And that's what I want to touch at. Back to the homily that our bishop had. That relates to the readings, and so you probably had a homily that talks about a homily this weekend that talks about those readings, or saw the readings. And if you go to the old form, or you're an Eastern Catholic, I'm sorry, this is very Roman Catholic centered, and very Novus Ordo centered too, based off of what I hear as well. But regardless, the lessons we learn from the homily carries over regardless of what the gospel is, and it's still the same gospel that you might not have, but it's still in the gospel. So that's just what I want to talk about. Originality is something, but above all, it's the example we lead. To give a good example. Not just for children, not just for your children, not just for your brothers, your sisters, your cousins, your nieces, your nephews, your whoever you might have in your life who is a child, but above all, to even our fellow peers, to adults, if you're a kid, to adults, fellow adults, to adults, kids, and to kids, younger kids, and, just to try and show our example, because younger children look up to older children look up to older children, and older children, and so on and so forth, until you get to adults, and adults have their own views that they might have because of someone who they might not necessarily look up to, but who they can closely associate to, even if they don't personally know them. And that's why we do look up to people, is because we can closely associate to them, because they're family, because they're friends, because they're cousins, because they're whatever, regardless. We can see this. We can see how you are affected by your peer group, by your people older than you, by your community, all that. That's things we see, that's things that's things you're told, peer pressure and stuff like that. It's all true and real things. So example is as important as that, is leading lives of good example, of being an example regardless of who is looking at us, or just living good based off of the examples we have and the example we want to be. Whatever. People might not like the example you give. That can be good or bad, depending on what your example is. So that's one thing I want to invite you. Evaluate the example you give. Evaluate the examples you have. And most importantly, regardless, find good examples and be a good example. So that's one thing I wanted to look at. I haven't posted a video. I missed 2 videos from last week. That's the entire week, so I apologize for that. But this was just some idea I had, one off the cuff on it. Sometime I might be scripting videos, I hope. But so that's one thing I wanted to look at, is the example you lead. And that's important for vocations, especially for people considering vocations, to look at the examples you have and to be the example you want for others, and to be and follow good examples. And one of those examples is social media influencers and things like that. So I leave you with that. And I leave you with the example, and I will see you on Thursday. I almost said Friday, Thursday. God bless, and have a great week.